Hello, welcome back to the Tears of Fire podcast, a podcast where I go over the Last Dragon Chronicles by Chris DeLacy. Today we're going to be covering chapters 24 through 27 of Darkfire. I'm Diego, and I created this podcast because when I wanted to interact with the series again after about 15 years, there was no podcasts, no audiobooks, and only a few videos on YouTube going over some reviews. So I figured why not make it myself? I appreciate you, those who have joined me on this journey, and I can't wait to see where we go afterwards. I hope you had a safe flight in and hit no turbulence. With that, let's get into the show. We start off at the beginning of part 2, Scuffinbury Hill. This is chapter 24, The Road to Scuffinbury. We open up this chapter with Tam and Lucy starting their trip. It's a very hostile environment where Lucy doesn't want pretty much anything to do with Tam. There's no talking, no interactions, just silence, no music, no anything. She does have Gwendolyn with her, but she's not locked away but zipped up in the bag, taking a quick rest. After a while, Lucy has questions for Tam, and they're talking about what Tam exactly is, if he's a polar bear like David, or has any special powers. Tam goes on to explain that he can't change into a polar bear the way that David can, and he's no shaman. But he has the Amma of Kellar and Avril inside of his palms. He shows both of those to Lucy, given the respective left hand with Avril and the right hand with Kellar. If you guys don't remember the last book, Avril is the storyteller, and Kellar is the fighting bear. I don't know exactly what this means, because later on to the section we get that the polar bears have been taken. Well, actually, it wasn't this section, it was in the earlier section where David explains that the bears were taken into Chimera, the Fane outer dimension / parallel world that's more of a thought place than a physical place. So does that mean that Avril and Kellar are no longer alive, since their Amma and their life force and essence is within Tam? Tam is able to call upon both of the bear's abilities to have all of the stories of the Arctic, as well as the fighting prowess of a polar bear. Lucy asks what this means, and if Tam really does have Avril inside of him, if he has the stories of the Arctic. Tam lifts an eyebrow and asks Lucy if she would like him to tell her a story. Lucy contemplates for a second, but eventually agrees. Tam thinks, but decides that he has something better for her, and pulls out the magazine of his newest edition of the Endeavor, the magazine at which he works. He tells Lucy that Steiner, the professor that Lucy, Arthur, and Liz all went to go see in Cambridge, is ready to publish the papers that he's been working on. Everything that he received from Henry Bacon, dealing with the dragon tongue and the glaciers that were going on in that expedition. Lucy reads through this and is just bewildered by the information that she's getting. She sees the story of the last 12 dragons, where the other 11 dragons all came together and put their tears into Gawain, being the single lone last dragon. This brought up a couple of questions for me personally. I was wondering how a dragon tear could be so powerful as to create the Arctic, because throughout history, if there's been so many dragons passing away, putting their fire tear through the earth, how hasn't something of this magnitude happened before, or something left over like the Arctic for us to be able to see and go, yeah, that's the remnants of a dragon? With this being said and brought to our attention, I do believe that this makes more sense, seeing That if it's the power of all 12 dragons in one tier, then of course, just by the magics given with that and what Gaia could do, that would obviously create the Arctic in this universe, right? So I get a little bit of an answer on that, but then that brings me to one dragon tier would be a lot of power to maintain and control and hold within yourself alone. So how did Guinevere hold on to this tier when there was 12 dragons within it? I would assume that that would burn her alive, even though they say that she's got the connection with the dragons from the beginning point. To me, one dragon would be hard enough to contain, let alone 12. So the fact that she was able to do that, she must have been extremely powerful. Lucy's taking the story with a grain of salt, but she starts believing it a little bit more when she realizes all the names start with a G. And so that solidifies it a little bit more within her mind. At the end of this chapter, they get to where they're going, an old inn called the Old Grey Dragon. Tam stops at Glissentor Hill, and they all take a look up. And Lucy can see while they're driving through the little rolling holes, through the rolling hills, the ribbon white horse along the top of them. Lucy starts getting car sick and just puts her head down and looks the opposite way. She's obviously relieved when they pull off to an escape road, is as it's described, and then start heading towards the inn. And that's a very short chapter, but that brings us to the end of chapter 24 and into 25. Let me get my little notes out. Chapter 25, The Old Grey Dragon. And this one's kind of a longer chapter. We get not too much happening, but a little bit of mystery. I'm not going to say suspense or thrill, but definitely some mystery for sure. The Old Grey Dragon, I was wondering if this is the description of a dragon we're going to see. Turns out it's just the name of the inn. The inn seems quiet enough. There's an innkeeper there. Her name is Hannah. She's a little mysterious, but she seems to have a lot of information on dragons. She doesn't really say if she believes or not, but that people like to come here because they believe that on clear, silent nights they can feel and hear the old dragon snoring. It's at the bottom of Glissentor Hill, and she lets Tam and Lucy know that it's just a 15-minute walk up to the side. While Tam and Lucy are clocking in, Hannah tells them that Clive, her husband, who's also an innkeeper there, has a lot more information on the lore surrounding this area. He's got every book ever written on Glissentor Hill. And if they have any questions whatsoever, they can ask him. Tam gives a sigh of relief almost and says that that's most appreciated because he's there doing research for his paper on kind of a work vacation. I don't know how one and the other can be the same. Obviously, if you're working, you're not on vacation, and if you're on vacation, you're not working. Otherwise, it'd be probably a pretty shitty vacation or the best work day ever. Take your pick. But so not too much happens after Hannah shows Lucy over to their rooms. Tam decides to take them on a walk to go up to the hill and see what they can find. They go to the top of Glissentor Hill, which is where the dragon itself is supposed to be asleep. Across the way, over the many rolling hills, they can see the ribbon horse that's marked very clearly, but absolutely nothing happens. Lucy had been wanting to call home to get an update on her mom, but she forgot to take her phone out with her, and so they walk back, and there's a couple of funny interactions. Lucy's kind of stumbling over herself, hitting some potholes, and not really sure how she's going to survive this trip. And Tam tells her just to stick to the path, don't take any winding roads. She'll be fine. Eventually, they get back down into the inn and they settle in for the night. Lucy forgot to message Melanie back, but she figures she can send a quick text. When she tries to send the text, she gets an error message saying failure to send. So she asks Gwendolyn to plug into it and see if she has the ability to strengthen the signal or just get it out. Gwendolyn ponders for a second and eventually decides to plug in her isosceles into the end of the phone. I'm guessing like where the battery port would be. She asks Lucy if it would be a good idea to connect to the listener on top of the fridge at Liz's house and then send the signal that way. Lucy doesn't see anything wrong with that and tells her to do it. One thing I should probably mention because it comes into a big thing towards the end of this chapter. When they were showing up to the inn at first, Lucy saw a cat at the stairs of the porch, and it doesn't seem like Tam was able to see it because they didn't interact at all. But Lucy kind of hunched over, pet the cat, and it says the cat didn't react at all, as if this cat had been in Lucy's life the whole time. But as soon as Tam walked up, the cat just slinked away without a trace. When they were checking out their bedrooms before they went on the little hike to the Glissentor Hill, Lucy saw the cat by the tree that they can see just outside of the window. And this tree is kind of crazy. Hannah lets them know that there's a lot of lore and history just with it. It's been dead since the 17th century, so well over 400 years. And the last thing that's known about this tree is a woman was hanged there. Lucy asks if it's a witch, and Hannah doesn't necessarily answer that. She just gives a quick second thought, and she goes to Lucy and says, "It depends on what you think a witch is." Many people thought that she would have believed in dragons in the old days. So, I mean, obviously, this is going to be a Sybil, right? I would like to know how, especially with how powerful Guilana is, I wouldn't think any normal humans would be able to capture one person and kill them by hanging. I would expect them to be able to use some form of magics in order to free themselves or the connections with animals that they have. So at this time, Lucy then goes right back to bed and she's having a nightmare. She sees Gwilyn, or at least something with Gwilyn's face. It looks dead inside, is what it's described as. And then she's woken up, according to her, she's woken up by the cat that had killed this raven that we got with Gwilyn's face on it and brought it and plopped it right on top of Lucy. Lucy screams off the top of her lungs, and everybody in the inn comes to see what's going on. Well, not everybody. I did forget to mention that Hannah relays information to Tam and Lucy saying that there's one other guest staying with them, Mrs. G. She's been there for weeks. She might as well be a tenant. In the middle of the night, when everybody's woken up, Hannah comes running in, and Tam is knocking on the door because Lucy had locked the door, obviously. And Tam is threatening to break down the door. Hannah's screaming at him, saying, "No, don't do that. That's destruction of property." But right before Tam decides to beat it down, Lucy comes and opens up the door. Hannah can see that it was just a nightmare, or at least according to her, just a nightmare, and decides to leave. Clive had come in and kind of checked on what's going on as he was getting there. He was tying up his robe, obviously deep in sleep. But Hannah relays saying that there's nothing worth investigating here and to go back to bed. Lucy does tell Tam what happened, and Tam kind of investigates the room a little bit. He checks the window. It was closed and locked. He checks the chimney, but there was no sooty footprints, so he doesn't think that that could be something. And he also checks the bathroom, which was empty except for one little spider. So before leaving, Tam asks Lucy if he can get her anything or if she needs anything, period. Lucy says no, and Tam offers to stay in the room with her while she sleeps and that he'll just hang out on the couch. But like me, I kind of got a weird feeling when he offered that. Lucy said no, she doesn't need him. And so before Tam leaves, though, he does get her to agree to at least keep the door unlocked, so if something happens, he can just come right in without having to worry about the door. Right after that, though, Lucy's climbing into bed. Tam leaves and is heading upstairs because he heard the top floor on top of them start to creak a little bit, which Hannah had told him that Miss G is right on top of Lucy's room. He went to go investigate, and Miss G comes walking out. She's absolutely barefoot. She's got her hair tied up in a messy bun is what I got. Looked like a spool of wire gray hair. And she's not necessarily rude. She just tells David that she was woken up quite abruptly by that awful girl's wailing and she needs to use the restroom. Tam doesn't think too much about what's going on, and so he lets her go. If I had been saying David this whole time, I apologize. It was all Tam. Tam did say that Lucy can call David if she needs to make herself feel a little bit better, but they both come to the decision that calling David isn't going to do anything, especially with everything going on at the house. David isn't going to want to leave. He's just going to tell Lucy that Tam has a hold of the situation and to follow him, essentially. But it says that if Tam would have waited just a second longer before going to bed, he would have heard the interaction going on between Miss G and something that we don't see. I would like to read that conversation actually. So let me get my book real quick. She remained in the bathroom for less than a minute before shuffling back to her room, whereupon she began a strange and apparently one sided conversation. So the girl is genuine. Interesting. Pause in parentheses. What? What about the sculpture? Pause. Don't be foolish. How could it be her familiar? It's a poor imitation of a dragon, nothing more. Even so, it seems we're not alone. What do you make of her handsome guardian? Pause. He smells of bears? Have you lost your senses entirely? Pause. What? Are you certain? Where? Pause. Don't tax my patient. I meant, where does he carry the mark? Pause. Then they are powerful. We must act before they do. The girl cannot be allowed to imprint on the dragon. Pause. Impertinent creature. There is no such thing as a rightful heir. You will do as my bidding or suffer. Pause. That's better. Now come here. Comfort me. Such excitement isn't good for my heart. Or yours. Pause. Be quiet. I'm not interested to know about the girl's dreams. I don't like ravens, especially dead ones. Pause. I said quiet. And there the conversation ended, but for a particular sound rising and falling through the silence. Purring. So, my first initial theories were that this old lady, Miss G, was Guilana, especially since we hadn't seen her yet. I no longer think that. I was also wondering if Tam had seen her. In my notes, it says, "Is this lady Guilana? Would Tam even recognize her?" Since I don't think there's been any recognition between Tam and Guilana. No, there was one where Guilana says, "I've seen you before," and then takes off on her trip. So he might have recognized her. But this is obviously not Miss G. I did think that the cat might have been a Sybil, the way that Guilana can change into Raven form. That maybe this Miss G was a Sybil turning into the cat, but it seems to be two different entities. So maybe this cat is somebody that got turned into a feline and doesn't have the ability to change back themselves. So it's interesting. I'd like to know what's going on. But with that, that brings us to the end of that chapter and into chapter 26. Chapter 26, An Encounter with Miss G. Oh, that's my bad, guys. I'm so sorry. So, the end of chapter 25, The Old Grey Dragon, ends with the cat killing the Darkling and bringing it and plopping it onto Lucy's chest. And then the entire part that I just got done discussing between Tam and Miss G was the entirety of chapter 26. It was pretty short. So I guess that brings us into chapter 27, Gwilyn Wakes. This one was a pretty short chapter as well. So these last two episodes, I apologize for being short. Might be, I'll look ahead and see what the length of the next couple chapters are, and see if we can't extend it, maybe do 6 chapters at a time, or if I can just get a guest that comes on and we can talk about it a little bit. But so chapter 27, Gwilyn wakes. Uh, so David and Xana are speaking over Liz, trying to see the condition and what's going on. Xana lets him know that there's been no change in condition. Gretel is sitting over there as well. She's got a bunch of seeds and flower heads opening up to see if she can do anything to Liz. Xana says that Gretel has also been scanning Liz. There's been no change to Liz's well, we've already said that condition, but I would say um, health. She's not dying. There's no infection. There's also been no effect to the baby that's inside her as well. But then they get interrupted during this conversation by Groin. He comes in and materializes instantly. And this kind of worries David because he's supposed to be on lookout, making sure that nothing weird is going on. But he lets everyone know that Gwilyn is awake and moving. David and Xana rush into the dragon's den, and all the dragons that were inside of Liz's room watching over them had already gotten there pretty quick. And when David gets there, he notices that Gwilyn is very, I would say, groggy is the best way to describe it. He doesn't seem fully awake. His eyes aren't completely violet, and he's kind of stumbling about and just feeling heavy and lazy. Groin props him up and tells the other dragons to stay back a little bit, and David scratches behind his ears, which is, I guess, the most sensitive spot for any dragon, to try to comfort him. He pulls back and he tells Xana that he can feel him trying to reach out with his and there was a small feel of Liz inside of him. There was a comment by Xana that Liz's mental is still vivid and lively and going crazy, even though she's not awake. When they pointed down to Liz's eyes, they're just darting back and forth, so she's trying to reach out to something. And we find out here that Gwilyn is trying to reach out to her. There's been no confirmation whatsoever if there's any kind of communication between the two. But I would think maybe there's something blocking them, the dark fire. David does, I would say, theorize that Liz might have an immunity after Gwilana healed her the first time, that Gwilana possibly healed her and strengthened her further than what her natural self once was. And so it might not be affecting her. Uh, Xana is hesitant. She says that she doesn't want to believe or trust Gwilana whatsoever, which is understandable. Like, fuck Gwilana. We all know that. My bad. During this interaction, though, the doorbell rings. David tells Groin to keep an eye on everybody, and they go down. Arthur opens up the door because he had already been down there getting some food since everybody's there, or not getting food. He was calling his university to call in sick and say that he needs to take care of Liz. There was a conversation between two ladies and Arthur. David and Xana didn't know who it was, but this lady is asking for Lucy. And when Arthur tells them that Lucy's not there, they then ask for Liz. And Arthur doesn't really get the chance to say anything before Alexa comes and interrupts him. She points out to the dragon that the girl at the outside is holding. She's like, "You got a dragon." And the girl answers and says, "Yeah, what's his name?" Alexa's asking. It's Glade. And so we know that this is Melanie. And the mom says, "Okay, we can come back later whenever it's more convenient." Melanie pushes back on this, saying that they came from, I forget where it was, but I want to say somewhere New England area, which, I mean, is still in Massachusetts, but they say, Melanie's saying that it's a zillion miles away and they can't just come back whenever. And so Xana, before even meeting these people or seeing them, they're not even completely down the stairs yet, looks to David and says that it's time to do the most ancient penny kettle tradition. Starts putting up her hair as well. David just gives her a funny look and asks her what's going on. And she cups his face sweetly and says, "It's time for the kettle," as in like tea. I thought that was sweet. Makes David and Xana have a good interaction for the first time in quite a while where they're not at each other's throats. And as much as like I'm mad at David for being gone too and not taking care of his family, I think everybody just wants to have the big happy family reunion, right? And want to see everybody together. So I would love to see Xana be happy go merry with David and get all back together. And maybe this is the starts of it. I don't quite remember. So we'll have to see where it goes from there. But that kind of brings us to the end of that section. And we're getting into the thick of it now, guys. We're kind of at the calm before the storm. And there's less than half of the book left. So I appreciate you joining me. If you guys have any comments, suggestions, or questions, I have my email, gadzooks, at gmail.com. You can also comment on Spotify and YouTube or anywhere that you can leave comments. I'm not sure if you can on Apple and Amazon, but there are options. Also, I do want to let you guys know they are now recorded and in the process of being edited. But me and my best friend Kaylee, who's been on here quite a few times as my guest, she's my bridge between the books. We started two new podcasts. One is If You Need Anything, where it's just me and her talking as best friends, and we go over anything and everything. It really is nice. We had our first conversation, lasted way longer than I thought. I cried twice, she cried once, and we were just kind of introducing ourselves, but I think you would enjoy that. I encourage you guys to come because we just want it to feel like you guys are on the couch with us. We want a sense of community, and we know that people feel better together. So, if that's something that you'd be interested, go look for that one. I will put links in the description once those are starting to be posted. The second one is also with Kaylee as my co host. And every episode, we are going to be going through the Hunger Games together. It's going to be one chapter at a time. And eventually, we'll get to where after we finish one book, we'll watch the movies and we'll sit there and compare them. And so she loves the Hunger Games. I remember reading them when I was younger. And obviously, I've watched the movies countless of times. So it'll be a fun exercise. And I hope to see you guys over there too, if that's maybe more your speed. With that being said, again, thank you for joining me on this journey. I hope you have a safe flight out and hit no turbulence.